On this first day of July, we look at Job 20 and 21. Yeah, and chapter 20, Zophar speaks again. And he says, pay attention. My thoughts urge me to answer because of the agitation within me. I hear censure that insults me. Those last two verses that we looked at, well, I don't know if I said anything yesterday, but verses 28 and 29 of chapter 19, Job says, if you say, how will we persecute him? The root of the matter is found in him. Be afraid of the sword. Wrath brings punishment. And so Job is kind of speaking out against these three friends. And Zophar picks up on that. He says, well, you're trying to censure us. You're trying to, say what we can and what we can't say. He says, I hear censure that insults me, and a spirit beyond my understanding answers. And then, starting at verse 4, he goes on to talk more about the fate of the wicked. Wicked, kind of throwing Job into that classification of wicked. And, all of us have a lot of sin within us, but it doesn't mean we're wicked. It just means we're human. But, do you not know from old, ever since mortals were placed on the earth, that the exalting of the wicked is short? So when the wicked brag and everything, it doesn't last long, and they get their comeuppance. The joy of the godless is but a moment. And think about, successful people. There are an awful lot of successful, well-known people that don't believe in God, don't believe in Jesus, or maybe they sort of believe in God, but especially not Jesus. And just the other day I read there's a famous person that says, I'm not a Christian, but I'm against the persecution that their Christians are going through, in Nigeria and Ethiopia and some of these others. He says, and this is a well-known, very successful person, So we don't need to be, there isn't a differentiation of who can be successful or not. It's not only the believers that are successful, and it's not only the wicked that bad things happen to. There's a book, Why Do Bad Things Happen to Good People? Well, it's just the way the world is. And why do good things happen to bad people? Well, that's another one of those things that we don't really like. We'd like to see those bad people get what they deserve. And these three friends are trying to get Job to understand or to admit or to discover what it is that he has done that is so wicked that he is being punished so drastically by God. He says, even if they mount up high as heavens and their heads reach the clouds, they will perish. They will fly like a dream and not be found. They will be chased away like the night. The eye that saw them will see them no more. And, these people can be very, very evil and very prominent and all of that. But, it doesn't mean that bad things are going to happen to them. Their children will seek the favor of the poor. Their hands will give back their wealth. Though wickedness is sweet in their mouth, though they hide it under their tongues, they are loath to let it go. It's just, these are some of the fates of the wicked. The things that, they believe that, if you're a wicked person and when you sin, that God is going to cause these evils to befall you. They will not look on the rivers and streams flowing with honey, and then for they have crushed and abandoned the poor. They have seized a house they did not build, and on and on and on, that all of these things that they do, the punishment that comes in respect of it. The verse 28 of chapter 20, the possessions of their house will be carried away, dragged off in the day of God's wrath. This is the portion of the wicked from God. The heritage decreed for them by God. And, so here, listen to that again. The possessions of their house will be carried away, dragged off in the day of God's wrath. What happened to Job? His children were all killed. His herds, his sheep, his cattle, his land, everything was gone. And his body is covered with sores. Doesn't that sound like the possessions of their house and everything being carried away because of the wrath of God? Well, we know from reading the story that it isn't due to the wrath of God. It is due to Satan that way. So, and he says, Zophar says, this is the portion of the wicked from God, the heritage decreed by God, And this is, God is doing this to you. Boom, 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 pound your fist on the counter and, be very adamant about it. Chapter 21, Job answers. He says, listen carefully to my words, and let this be your consolation. Bear with me, and I will speak. And then after I have spoken, mock on. Job he talks about the wicked and how, the wicked remain unpunished, even though they don't believe in God, even though they do these wicked things. How many of the wicked remain unpunished is what Job is saying. He says, my complaint is my complaint addressed to mortals? Why should I not be impatient? And look at me and be appalled. And when I think of it, I am dismayed. Why do the wicked live on, reach old age, and grow mighty in power? Why are their children established in their presence and their offspring before their eyes? Why are their houses safe from fear and no punishment from God upon them? Why do their herds breed and successfully and have no miscarriages? Why do they send their little ones out like a flock? Why do they sing to the tambourine and lyre? Why do they live? Why do they live happy, fulfilled, successful lives, these wicked? Why are they not punished by God? Verse 14, they say to God, leave us alone. We do not desire to know your ways. What is the Almighty that we should serve him? They're mocking God. And Job realizes that there are people that do mock God. They make fun of God, and it's, like so many people today that say, oh, the Bible is just a bunch of nothing. We know more than the Bible. We know more than God. I mean, these are the wicked people that think that they know better than God, that think that they know better than the Word of God. And this is, I think, one of the reasons that we have this book of Job in the Bible for us today, isn't to show us Job's pain and suffering, but it's to show us and remind us that there are evil, wicked people that are very successful. There are people that lie and cheat and slander and do all sorts of bad things and yet are successful. God isn't up there in heaven pointing his finger and zapping them out of, he's not doing that. So the wicked live as well or better sometimes than the faithful. He said, how often is the lamp of the wicked put out? How often does calamity come upon them? That's verse 17, How often is God punishing them? How often does God distribute pain in his anger? How often are they like straw before the wind, like chaff that carries them away? You say that God stores up his iniquity for their children. Well, let it be paid back, Let their own eyes see their destruction. And, here verse 22, talking about some of the wicked. One dies in full prosperity, being wholly at ease and secure. His loins full of milk, and the marrow of his bones are moist. Another dies in bitterness of soul, never having tasted good. They lie down alike. It's the good live, the bad live, the wicked live, the good, and life goes on. And so these three friends are trying to point out to Job that you must have some wickedness within you, that this punishment from God is coming. And Job says, look at the world. Look at the world. Look at all of the evil, ugly, wicked people of the world. Are they receiving this punishment from God that you're talking about? Where is this punishment from God for so many who are wicked? And so it's just a reminder for us that we live. Life goes on. Wicked people flourish. Good people flourish. Wicked people struggle. Good people struggle. It's part of the way of the world. And we can't point a finger at God and say that God is punishing those people that have more problems than others. Why did God give me this disease? Why did God let this happen? I mean, these are questions that we hear in the world. But I don't think that God makes those things happen. It's just a part of the everyday world.